Okay, so how well do you actually understand basic math? Well, if you have pretty strong basic math skills, this should be a very easy problem to solve without the aid of a calculator. All right, so let's take a look at this problem. We have zero point 0.6 divided by 3 times 1/2 squared, and this is a multiple choice question. In other words, the right answer is one of these choices here. And let's go through these choices. So we have A, 1 over 20, B, 36, C, 0.18, and D, 9 over 2. Now, the only rule is no calculator, but if you really want to get the right answer, make sure to take out a piece of paper and write out each step. Okay, take your time. There's no rush to do this problem because if you get this wrong as I go through the solution, you can identify whatever you didn't understand. That is the way to learn math. But if you have the answer, go ahead and put that into the comment section. I'll share the correct answer in just 1 second. Then, of course, I'm going to walk through all the steps necessary to get this problem right without the aid of a calculator. But before we get started, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John, and I have been teaching middle and high school math for decades. And if you need help learning math, check out my math help program at tcmathacademy.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. And if this video helps you out, or if you just enjoyed this content, make sure to like and subscribe, as that definitely helps me out. All right, so one more time, let's take a look at the problem. Pretty straightforward. We have zero point 0.6 divided by 3 times 1/2 squared. And let's go ahead and see that right answer right now. The correct answer is A, 1 over 20. All right, now if you got this right, you definitely get a happy face, an A plus, a 100%, and a certificate of excellence because you appear to be a certified professional expert in a lot of different areas of basic math. So, what are these areas? Well, we have decimals here, we have division, we have powers, and we have multiple math operations, division, multiplication, powers going on. So we're going to need to understand something about the order of operations. So this is all kind of really key critical concepts that you learn in basic math. Now, if you got this wrong, don't feel bad. Matter of fact, I'm happy that you made this error with this problem because this is an opportunity for you to improve your basic math skills. So never feel bad about making a math error. Because this is how we learn, by making mistakes. So let's go ahead and get into this right now. All right, so here is our problem. Now, if you don't know how to do this problem, let's suppose you are a math student and you have to, figure out the right answer on a math quiz or test and you come across this problem. So what should you do? Well, if you're thinking, I'm going to guess, Mr. YouTube Math Man, well, that is the right answer, okay? I'm going to tell you as a math teacher, yes, indeed, always guess, never ever leave a multiple choice question or any math question blank, right? Unless you're going to get penalized. And even with those type of tests like the SAT or ACT, you should always still take a guess, especially if you have a reasonably good guess. But in this particular problem, you might be saying, well, let me see here. I got a zero point 0.6 or 6 and 3. I don't know. There's a 6 and 3. Maybe this answer has something to do with 18 and there's a decimal here. So this one has a decimal. Maybe I'll pick that. Well, that's a good guess, right? Unfortunately, that's wrong, but at least you took a try. But the only way to really figure out the right answer here is to actually do the math because this obviously is the correct answer. All right, but we're going to kind of need to understand the various aspects of this problem because we have decimals going on here, we have fractions, we have powers, and we have different mathematical operations. So let's go ahead and get into this right now because we're going to need to understand the order of operations. Okay, this is a critical thing. I'll explain this in a second. We're going to need to understand something about powers, and then of course we're going to need to know a thing or two about fractions and decimals and place value. All right, so again, these are all these concepts, or well, these concepts here, excuse me, are things that you learn in primary school, elementary school, and but they continue on into middle school, high school, college, and this is the foundation of mathematics beyond just counting, numbers. And a lot of people don't really understand these concepts as well as they think. In other words, they'll take a look at this problem like, oh, this is easy, Mr. YouTube Math Man. I can do this one, two, three. Then they do the problem, then they get the wrong answer. So let's go ahead and get into this right now. And let's do a quick review of the order of operations. Now, I'm not going to teach on all of these topics, but this is a critical part of this problem because it's a very confused part of basic mathematics. Excuse me. All right, so order of operations. Now, what does this mean? Well, operations. Now, we're not talking about like medical operations, like, hey, what order should I take my operations? Maybe I should do my knee surgery, then my hip surgery. No, no, we're not talking about these type of operations. We're talking about mathematical operations. So in math, what we do with numbers like add, subtract, multiply, and divide, these things here are called mathematical operations. So what is the order of operations? When we have a math problem that involves various mathematical operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, we need to know the correct order to do things. Because if we add first and then we divide and then we multiply, or maybe we subtract and then multiply and then divide, you're going to come up with different answers. There's only one correct order. And you can remember the correct order by this lovely little acronym right here, PEMDAS, right? So PEMDAS. There's a little saying here. Matter of fact, I'll tell you it right now, and then I'll quickly explain this. So that is, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Once again, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. All right, so this is a little mnemonic, a little memory phrase to remember the correct order of operations. So what is PEMDAS? This is a checklist that goes from left to right. All right, so let me go ahead and explain this right now. Let me actually write this out. PEMDAS, okay? So this is a checklist you need to follow when you have any problem, okay? Whether it be a numeric problem or an algebraic problem. If it has multiple different operations, you need to be thinking about this acronym. All right, so obviously these letters stand for something, and let me go ahead and explain this right now. So P stands for, you're going to start again from the left and you're going to move to the right. So P stands for parentheses. So if you see anything with parentheses, but not just even these type of parentheses, they can be brackets like this or squiggly brackets, that's where you start first. All right, now this really here, parentheses, you want to think of this as grouping symbols. So the way we kind of group numbers together. So if you have 7 plus 1, matter of fact, let's do this differently. 7 or 2 times 7 divided by 3. I can group numbers together in various ways by putting parentheses around them. So P is what we call grouping symbols. So I can group these numbers this way. So if you see parentheses, grouping symbols are going to start there inside of those parentheses. But they don't have to always be parentheses. They could be brackets like this or even squiggly brackets. Now, one more thing on the parentheses is if you have multiple parentheses in a problem, okay, so let's say there's a big math problem, you have parentheses, brackets, where do you start? You always start from the innermost parentheses and then just work your way out. All right, so that is P. Now let's move on to E. So E stands for exponents, but you really want to think of it as powers. So like 2 to the third power, this right here obviously is a power, but this little number up here is called the exponent, part of the power. The big number is called the base. The entire thing is a power. So 2 to the third power, 3 is the exponent. So E stands for exponents. And the reason why we don't put another P there, because it could be confusing, like, oh, parentheses and parentheses again. So that's why we have the E. All right, so exponents or powers. So let's go ahead and just kind of review again. So this is parentheses. This would be like powers. Now, sometimes in a problem, you're not going to have any parentheses or you're not going to have powers. So you just kind of go through this checklist and address whatever you have next. All right, now the next thing I'm going to show you is one of the most confused parts of basic math. So M, D, A, and S, let's just go and tell you what these stand for. So M stands for multiplication, D stands for division, A stands for addition, and S stands for subtraction. Now, it just seems like common sense that, all right, we're going to do all the multiplication next, Mr. YouTube Math Man. I know, I get what's going on. We're going to do anything. If we see multiplication, we're going to do this first, and then we'll move on to any division. Well, that's unfortunately not the way it works. And that's why people when it comes to the order of operations, they get frustrated with math. They're like, hey, what are you telling me? You're telling me it's a checklist. It goes from left to right. And now you're not telling me what's going on. Well, let me explain this to you because sometimes this isn't explained well enough in a lot of math courses or textbooks. All right, the next thing is multiplication or division. Multiplication or division, whatever you see first from left to right. So if you have multiplication, then division, you're going to do the multiplication first. But if you have division and then multiplication, you're going to do any division first, right? So if you see multiplication and division in the same problem, you're going to do whatever you see first from left to right. And addition and subtraction work the same way. All right, so that is the order of operations. And again, this is probably, in my experience, one of the most confused areas of basic math. All right, now we'll go ahead and address these other skill sets, how to find a power of a fraction or a number in a second, and then fractions and decimals. These are other big areas of basic math, but let's just use what we need to use for this problem. And here is our lovely problem right now. So we have 0.6 divided by 3 times 1/2 squared. So we have a decimal here, we have division, we have multiplication, we have a fraction, and we have powers. So a lot going on, but first things first we want to think about this decimal. So we have a decimal, we have a fraction. So somebody might be saying, hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, I don't really like decimals. Well, no problem. So what we can do is just address this decimal. So how do we say this decimal? Okay, so obviously I described it as 0.6, excuse me, 0.6. I don't know if I said 0.2. I said point. It is 0.6. By the way, if I ever misspeak, I apologize. I do speak a lot, and sometimes I misspeak. But anyways, this is 0.6, right? But what's another way to describe this decimal? Well, if you're saying, well, it's 6/10 as well, Mr. YouTube Math Man, well, that's absolutely correct. So let's go ahead and change this decimal to a fraction. And the way we're going to do that is to say the decimal in a different way. So it's 0.6, right? I can say it this way, 0.6, quote unquote, or I can say 6/10, okay? And 6/10 describes the place value because the 6 is in the tenths place. So 0.6 we're going to write as the fraction 6/10. So you need to know how to convert decimals to fractions. So 0.6 we're going to write as the fraction 6/10. And now we have a problem with all fractions. Now you could reduce this fraction right now as a next step, but we'll just leave it alone for the time being. So this is our problem. We have 6/10 divided by 3 times 1/2 squared. All right, so now let's go ahead and apply our PEMDAS because we have powers, parentheses, division, and multiplication. All right, so let's think about PEMDAS. So what does this say? Well, we have to start with parentheses. So are there any parentheses? Yes, but is there anything to do inside of the parentheses? In other words, is it like 2 plus 7? Right? There's no mathematical operations inside of the parentheses. We just have a number. So technically, this P here, in terms of parentheses, really there's nothing to do. So we're going to move on to the next step, and that is E exponents or powers. So do we have a power in our problem? Indeed we do. So now we have to figure out what 1/2 squared is. So this is our first move. And what is 1/2 squared? Well, when we square a number, what we're going to do, for example, like 2 to the third power. Let's just talk about powers in general. So the exponent is basically telling you how many times to multiply this number by itself. So this would be 2 times 2 times 2. So that is the same thing as 2 cubed. So in this case, 1/2 squared is what? We're going to take 1/2 and multiply it by itself twice, right? So just one time, 1/2 times 1/2. Now, hopefully you know how to multiply fractions. You simply just multiply the respective numerators and denominators. So that's 1 over 1, or 1 times 1 is 1, over 2 times 2 is 4. So 1/2 squared will be 1/4. All right, so that is our first move. So let's go ahead and write the answer. All right, so here is what we have right now. So 6 over 10, 6/10 divided by 3 times 1/4. All right, now what should we do at this point in the problem? Well, you always need to keep that PEMDAS in mind, right? So you're like, all right, well, I got fractions, but we have division and multiplication. And a lot of people are going to go, oh, yes, Mr. YouTube Math Man, I know PEMDAS, I'm really good at it. There's no parentheses, we took care of power, so I'm going to do multiplication next. They will do this, and this is how you get math problems wrong, all right? Wrong, wrong, wrong. Don't do the multiplication. You have to ask yourself, hey, I see multiplication, but do I have any division as well? Yes, I have both division and multiplication. Great. What do we see first from left to right? So from left to right, I see division first, right? So I'm going to have to do the division right here. And then lastly, we'll do the multiplication. Okay, so if you made this error, don't feel bad. This is probably the most common mistake in terms of basic numeric problems. But the only way you get better at math is to practice, 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 and correct your errors. So never feel bad about making a mistake. So let's go ahead and talk about how to divide fractions. So we have 6 tenths divided by 3, which of course is another basic math skill. So let's go ahead and do this right now. All right, so 6 tenths divided by 3. Now, it is perfectly fine to reduce this fraction if you wanted to, okay, or we can leave it as it is. So we can simplify it. So 6 tenths is the same thing as what? Well, 2 goes into 6, 3, and 2 goes into 10, 5. So you could do that, but you still are faced with taking this fraction and dividing it by 3. All right, so let's go ahead and take that next step, and that is to take a look at this real quick before we actually finish up this problem. And two things going on here. First is an invitation to support this channel. In other words, to support my efforts to try to make math clear and understandable. Now, I've been teaching math for decades. I love teaching mathematics. It's my true passion. I've done a lot of different things in my lifetime, but I think the most rewarding thing has been really, helping people understand math because there's such a problem out there with people struggling with math because they don't think they're smart enough, right? And what I've found is that the number one thing that holds people back from being successful in math is their mindset, right? They're like, I'm bad at math. I'm not smart enough in math. Listen, I'm telling you right now, you can be absolutely successful in mathematics, but it's going to take work and time and effort and commitment and all that kind of good stuff and a great instruction, right? There are no shortcuts, all right? So I have to be a truth teller there. So if you've been trying to improve in math or learn math a little bit here, a little bit there, well, that's how you get frustrated. But if you're committed to the subject and you can find a great math teacher, and if you stick with it long enough, you can absolutely build your math skills up. And in that with that kind of message in mind, what I like to do is run sales on my full main math courses every so often. And my full main math courses are these, all right? So we have pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calculus. A lot of people take my courses as their actual full comprehensive, full curriculum courses for middle school, high school, and even college. So these are this is a lot more, a lot well, let me just say it this way. My YouTube videos are like little tutorial videos, and my courses here, my video instruction is full-on comprehensive instruction. So if you really want to learn math from me, this is the way to do it. But anyways, I'm going to leave a 25% off discount coupon. You'll see the coupon code in the description and the links to these particular courses. And this is a limited time offer. I like to run these sales for like a day only, but I'll kind of keep the sale going for like a day or two. So if you're interested in taking one of my full math courses, this is the time to do it. But let's go ahead and finish up this problem because now that we know that we have to do division, we need to just simply divide these fractions. All right, so how do we divide fractions? We have to kind of focus in on this part of the problem. Well, you might be saying, hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, this is not a fraction, it's just 3. Well, we can think of any number as a fraction by just putting it over 1. So we have 6 over 10 divided by 3. Well, when we talk about division of fractions, we don't really divide fractions. We change division to multiplication by flipping the fraction on the right-hand side of the division operator upside down. That's called the reciprocal. So we have 3 over 1. So we're just going to flip-flop the numerator and denominator. That gives us 1/3, but we also have to change from division to multiplication. All right, so this is what we have right now. So now we just have one big multiplication problem. So let's just go ahead and take 6 over 10 times 1 over 3. So 3 can go into 6, 2. There's all different ways you can actually do this problem. So if you don't understand cross canceling, you can just multiply the respective numerators and denominator. So that's 6 over 30, but 3 goes into 6 too. So we have 2/10 here, okay? And that's going to be multiplied by 1/4. Again, you could go, well, you can either reduce this fraction down to 1/5 and then multiply across, or you can take this 2 and cross cancel a 2 over here. So now we have 1/2. But the bottom line is we're going to end up with 2/10 times 1/4. So let's go this route. Let's just simplify this fraction. So we have 2/10. If we simplify 2/10, it's 1/5 times 1/4, and we multiply across, we get 1 over 20. So different ways we can get to 1 over 20, but this right here is the final answer. All right, so a lot of things, that some of you might have been, thinking that you're probably really comfortable with, like fractions, decimals, order of operations, things like this. This is what I've found through my years of teaching, is that most people who are struggling in math really don't want to spend the time to go back and review the basics. And this is the best thing you can do, right? So if you, let's suppose you're an algebra student, and this is really the case for a lot of people that are studying more advanced math, like algebra or even trigonometry. I've had even pre-calculus students be like, "Hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man," or "Hey, Mr. Teacher, I don't want to go back and review the basics because I'm beyond that. I'm doing algebra, I'm doing the quadratic formula. There's no need for me to understand." Well, listen, I'm telling you right now, if you are having difficulties in mathematics, it's likely because there was some step. Okay, now here is really bad steps here, but you kind of progress without really understanding these concepts that really support what you're learning way up here. Okay, so it's absolutely beneficial for you to go back and review basic concepts in mathematics, because these things here apply at all levels of math, just not in basic math like this. Okay, so hopefully this little video helps you out. And if that's the case, don't forget to like and subscribe. And with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your math adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.